To truly understand why Donald Trump likes tariffs so much, I think you have to look at the Trump international real estate development currently underway in Vietnam. When Trump held what he called Liberation Day, as he called it, in April of last year, announcing his slew of proposed new tariffs, Vietnam was slated for some of the highest. Trump was threatening to put a 46% tariff on Vietnam. Now, at the same time, the Trump family real estate business was trying to get permission to develop a $1.5 billion new property in Vietnam. They basically wanted to build enough villas to house 35,000 residents, a 36-hole golf course, of course, theme parks, and a commercial district. Now, the approval process for something like that in Vietnam typically takes somewhere between 2 and 4 years. But somehow, last year, the Trump family managed to get the Vietnamese government to approve everything in just 3 months. Just 1 month after Trump threatened a 46% tariff on the country, Vietnam's central government short-circuited the process for the Trump family property. And legal experts described it this way to the Times, saying that to fast-track the Trump development, Vietnam ignored its own laws. Vietnamese officials have allowed the Trump project to break ground without completing at least a half dozen legally required steps, from securing all the land and financing to conducting environmental reviews. The government essentially forced the locals who lived or farmed on the land to sell, to clear the space for the Trump property. Now, in a letter obtained by the Times, Vietnamese officials explicitly stated that the project required special support from the top ranks of the Vietnamese government because it was receiving special attention from the Trump administration and President Trump personally. The Prime Minister of Vietnam himself even spoke at the groundbreaking. I mean, here he is with Eric Trump. Yeah, there he is. Now, at the time, the White House said that, quote, all of the president's trade discussions are totally unrelated to the Trump organization. Okay. And Vietnam's foreign ministry did not respond to questions about the project. But after all that, when it came time for Trump to actually implement the tariffs he threatened on his so-called Liberation Day, after the Vietnamese government had hustled and ignored their own laws to fast-track Trump's $1.5 billion project, what do you know? Trump dropped his tariff rate for Vietnam from 46% to just 20%. Gee, I wonder why. And if that example isn't clear enough for you, you could also look to Trump's tariffs on Switzerland, which I mentioned earlier. I mean, last August, Trump hit Switzerland with a 39% tariff, one of the highest tariffs in the world. Trump has since openly explained that his reasoning for that tariff was personal. He said that he made the tariff so high simply because the president of Switzerland, quote, rubbed him the wrong way. Now, in an effort to get that tariff rate cut down, Switzerland appeared to Trump personally. The Swiss sent a delegation of Swiss industry tycoons bearing gifts for Trump, a special Rolex desktop clock, there it is, and a personalized golden bar, valued at a little more than $130,000. Now, the White House says that Trump merely accepted the gifts on behalf of his presidential library, making them legal. But regardless of the legality, the charm offensive appears to have worked, because 10 days later, Trump cut Switzerland's tariffs from 39% to just 15%. Again, I wonder why. Last year, we also saw Trump try to use his tariffs to help his personal political buddies abroad. Back in 2022, the former president of Brazil and Trump's buddy, Bolsonaro, lost the Brazilian presidential election, but tried to stay in power anyway by mounting a military coup. Now, that coup, much like January 6th here, didn't work. But unlike January 6th here, where Trump managed to avoid all accountability, last year the government of Brazil was criminally prosecuting Bolsonaro for his coup attempt. Whether it was to help his buddy or to quash the precedent that governments could prosecute former leaders for coup attempts, Trump decided to intervene. He threatened a 50% tariff on Brazil, partly in retaliation for Bolsonaro's prosecution, demanding that Brazil's current president that he drop the charges. And guess what? Brazil didn't comply. Trump did hit the country with a 50% tariff, but Brazil prosecuted Bolsonaro anyway, sentencing him to 27 years in prison. And then, after all that chest pounding and all that bluster, Trump dropped the tariffs anyway. He chickened out. Now, what makes Trump using tariffs like this all the worse is that it is not just foreign countries that end up paying the price for all of Trump's wheeling and dealing. It's, of course, you. Last week, economists at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and Columbia University determined that through November of last year, 90% of the economic burden of Trump's tariffs fell on U.S. companies and consumers. And days before that, a conservative-leaning think tank released their own research, showing that Trump's tariffs cost U.S. households an average of $1,000 last year. And that's a conservative estimate in more ways than one. Other estimates go as high as $2,400. So now that the Supreme Court has struck down most of Trump's tariffs as illegal, does anybody get a refund? Does anybody get any money back? And now that Trump has issued yet another round of tariffs, where do things go from here? Luckily, I have just the person to ask. Senator Elizabeth Warren joins me next.